All right, everybody, welcome back once again. Thank you for watching this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, I recommend checking out my website, danceofthecosmos.com. Again, my name is Dan Hendricks. So today we're going to talk about understanding, recognizing, and accepting our limitations, or just accepting limitations, which can be our own limitations, as well as the limitations of astrology, or the limitations of a technique. So I think this is very important because there can be, we can get to that idea that we're always thinking that everything is indicated by astrology. I think a lot of our life is, to tell you the truth. I think a lot of our life is indicated by astrology, or can be indicated by astrology, but I would not say that every single event in every single person's life is completely 100% dictated by the planets, because there's a couple reasons why. And the first reason why I would say that is because what we're looking at when we're looking at a birth chart is it's very important to realize that that is the birth chart. This is the karmas that they were, and the set of parameters and circumstances and paradigms that a person is born into. So, of course, that's the energy that they're going to have to work with, right? But at the same time, that doesn't mean that 100% that this is going to dictate our personalities and how we interact. It depends, because for some of us, we are kind of unaware of, I think for each of us too, there's certain aspects of our lives where we have these patterns that we're not even aware that we're doing, and we're constantly repeating, and we're kind of stuck in that cycle, right? Whereas I think maybe with all of us, we have our times and periods, like they have the word epiphany, where we have these realizations that, oh my gosh, why do I keep doing that? Well, I'm going to stop doing that, And then all of a sudden it's like we're moving away from the sway of our chart. And maybe we're able to stop doing that because we're doing, graha shanti, we're doing planetary pacification, right? We're doing the right proper mantras, and we've got a really strong sadhana. So we're able to maybe we're being led by a guru who is teaching us to let go of the grip of some of these karmas, right? And helping us to help burn them off. Anyways, so, and then I liken astrology to meteorology. Because if you think about meteorology, what do? Is they take, okay, this is the jet stream or whatever. This is a storm system. This is the location that we're talking about, which is located in this jet stream. This storm system's following this jet stream. This storm is this far away. The winds are blowing this fast. So now, therefore, in 3 days, for example, let's say, 3 days, this city right here is going to experience rain. So then the meteorologist goes on to say, so there's a 70% chance of rain, right? Because they're saying that, hey, it's showing that this energy is coming your way, but maybe this storm just moves a little bit north or a little bit south, or maybe it's not as intense as they believed it was, and it ends up just being cloudy that day and only for a short period of time. So, that's kind of the same thing with astrology, because there's so many techniques out there, and I don't know, maybe there is an astrologer that knows all the techniques and has used all of them and knows how to apply them and when to apply every single technique. But for the most part, I know I don't. And I don't know everything. And so maybe I know 5% of what there is to know, but maybe I can make a lot of readings and a lot of good readings with 5%. But at the same time, even if I knew 95%, there would still be 5% that I don't know. And maybe that 5% is the one chart for this individual that the thing that I was going to predict didn't come true because I didn't have that other small 5%. So anyways, I believe since there's so many things in astrology to look at, there's so many different ways of looking at it and so many different indicators of any one specific area of life, because we have the house lord, the karakas, and so on and so forth, that it's hard to keep your finger on every single one of those. It's hard to keep your finger on every single aspect of time. So just realize that we have our limitations as astrologers, where there's only so much stuff that we can ever know. And I think understanding our limitations of astrologers, the way that we work with that is finding our niche. And I think this is very important, is realizing that the better that we can work as astrologers in a capacity is when we stop getting out of the just I'm an astrologer mode and start getting into the I'm a counseling astrologer, I'm a financial astrologer, I'm a marriage astrologer, I'm a predictive astrologer. Once we start finding and indicating our niches, then it's like we're using our limitations. We're accepting our limitations, that I don't know everything, but I know this, I'm really good at this one aspect and area of chart interpretation. And it's helpful to the people that I'm able to do readings for. And so I think it's very important for us to find our niche, because that's how we can really work with the limitations of astrology. And I think it's also just so important. I mean, I made a video about confluence, to understand that not every single technique, in fact, is limited because there's so many different factors. So I think it's very important to learn a lot of techniques, and then to know with each technique that maybe you're using it correctly, but maybe there's other things in the chart and other ways of looking at it that just aren't showing up or shaping up the way that you're expecting, and to be very flexible with your techniques and your expectations of how those techniques will work, because every technique is limited because there's so many different factors to look at in a chart. And then I also think when it comes to our limitations, it's so important to not let our ego get in the way of making a proper answer to somebody, because I think we have to be fair as astrologers. Like let's say someone's coming in because they're depressed and you're a counseling based astrologer, and you know how to really help people also with, maybe you have like a psychiatric degree, I don't know. And so you're used to working with people and you're qualified to do so and help them on an emotional level. Well, so you're making a reading for someone, you're like, yeah, I'm going to help you. You're going through, Saturn's crossing the exact degree of your moon these last few months. That's why you're experiencing these conditions. They're like, oh my gosh, yeah. And then you give them some mantras, or you give them some psychotherapy or whatever it is that you do, and you help them out. And then the person goes, oh yeah, by the way, when am I going to make more money? If we let our ego get in the way of that, we're going to go, oh, well, let's see here. You're in Sun Dasha, la la la, and you might just follow a couple strands, make a prediction that ends up being completely meaningless because, it doesn't, you didn't want to say no, or you didn't want to say, you wanted to be right, or something like that. That's what the ego always wants to be right. And it's such a pain in the butt. I'm always fighting it. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that's always fighting that aspect of the ego. Anyways, and so it's important with astrologers to accept our limitations of our time constraints of that specific reading. So if someone's asking you a reading in the last 5 minutes, they just go, oh yeah, what about this other aspect of my life that wasn't even supposed to be part of our scheduled reading today? Well, I think it's important for you to say, you know what, we can reschedule a whole other reading, or say, you know what, I don't do financial astrology. I know somebody who does. Let me give you their number. They're really good at this. This is who you should talk to if this is what you really want to know about. And then, or if it's beyond your capability, they ask you something that you're not even familiar with. You're like, I don't know how to predict that. Like I had a client ask me one time. It was like basically the nature of the question was, when am I going to like reunite with God? Basically, when am I going to shed all my karmas and all that stuff? It's like things like that. Like that's an easy one to answer. It's like I don't have the information for that. I mean, that's like between you and God. That's for you and whenever you stop attaching with the ego. But then I've also had a situation where I had somebody ask me this. This is when I was first starting to do readings. And honestly, I foolishly answered this question. This person said, when are me and my daughter, when is my daughter ever going to forgive me and we're going to reconcile? And this is an older woman, by the way. This isn't like, a woman who's 30 and her daughter is 6 years old. This is a woman who's older and her daughter is an adult also. And her daughter is like kind of shut out her entire family, really. And so the question there was, and then I was like trying to make it work in the chart right there in the reading. And I was like, you know what, I'll get back to you about this. I never got back to the person, because I didn't want to say, I don't know. Because honestly, in that situation, it's like how, I didn't know which factors to even look at in the chart or even how to go about answering that question. But did I say that to the client? No, because I didn't want to come across like I didn't know what I was talking about. Like I felt like for some reason that was going to like debase me as an astrologer and make me look lower or something. When I realize now, in hindsight, that it would have made me probably look better if I would have just said that, because it would have showed more confidence in what I can actually do, and I understand that. And so I think it's very important when it comes to that we recognize what our limitations are. And I think it's also important that, like when I mentioned earlier, like if you're 55 minutes through an hour reading and they ask you something else, to just say, hey, you know what? I can look at that if you can, knowing that you can. And let's say you can, but that if you want to give them a quality answer to their question, that they're going to have to schedule a whole other follow-up reading. And being confident enough to say that instead of trying to sit there. Because here's what happens in my experience when people ask you a question about something that you didn't even think to look at the chart because they didn't ask you about it. Here's what you end up doing. So let's say I'm over here and I'm engaging with this person. We're talking, we're looking at their chart. I've got my computer right here, just to remind me, of whatever, or I got my notes right here about their chart. And then the person goes, yeah, so what about my finances? Like, oh, I didn't know we were going to talk about finances. And so here's what happens if I try and do that reading. I go like this. The client's right here and I go. And this is what's going to happen. I'm going to sit here for 5, 7, 10 minutes looking at the computer while they're just like going to keep answering questions. I'm going to feel pressured trying to get it. Yeah. So it's just a matter of being confident in our acceptance of the limitations of astrology, of each astrological technique, of being accepting of our limitations of what we're just naturally inclined and good at when it comes to the sphere of astrology and what we do best, and gearing ourselves toward that, and finding our niche. I think that's super, super important, and being able to say no and being able to refer to other people when we don't know the answer. So anyways, so this is my video on understanding, recognizing, and accepting our limitations. So thank you very much for watching, and namaste.